Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to talk to you about one of my favorite short stories of all time and the lessons that are hidden in it that have very real and practical insights for us, all of us who are trying to solve problems, discover truths, and seek those figurative and literal treasures. That there are some dispositions, some ways of carrying ourselves and thinking and approaching things that can really help us. And this is a short story that I guarantee you the vast majority of you watching this have never heard of, or you've probably never read. It just doesn't seem to be quite as familiar to many people. Even when I talk to people who are English majors in college, and even some who've done graduate work in English, don't seem to know this one sometimes. Others do. But it's by Stephen Vincent Benét, and it's called Johnny Pie and the Fool Killer. And it's a really powerful story. So I'm going to tell you a very short version of it right now. And then I'll get into the 5 lessons that we can take away from it. There are far more than 5. I always just pick 5 because it's an easy number and seems to fit the time frame and the YouTube attention span and so forth. So here's a little premise. There's a young man named Johnny Pie who I think, and I'm going to misrepresent parts of the story because I've kind of retold it in my head so many times that maybe it no longer matches perfectly the way that the original story was written. And it was turned into a play and some other things along the way. I've even turned it into a song that I wrote a couple of years ago. So the idea is Johnny Pie, I believe, is an orphan, and he's working for this storekeeper who, as I recall, is a kind of gruff, a little bit hard person and a little bit harsh with Johnny oftentimes. And as Johnny is working, the storekeeper continually warns Johnny that about making mistakes. And the way he warns him is he says, "You better be careful, boy, because if you do something wrong, I think the fool killer is going to come for you." And and Johnny kind of pictures this fool killer to be this kind of grim reaper like character to come and get those who are unwise and who make bad decisions and who make lots of mistakes. And so Johnny is working, and the man will say, "I think I hear that fool killer coming, boy. You better get your act together." And so Johnny one day does something wrong in the store. I can't remember what it was. And he gets very nervous, so much that he thinks he's convinced himself that he hears the footsteps of the fool killer. And so Johnny knows that he has to run away. So he runs away. And he proceeds to go on this journey from place to place to place. And he meets different people. At one point, he meets a man that's basically a snake oil salesperson. He will go to towns and he's selling these elixirs, these apparent medications that can help solve all sorts of ailments and the like. And Johnny is thinking, wow, this is a great, wise person to be around who helps others, and he's very smart and knows all of this. And so Johnny begins to follow this man. But after the man leaves the town, he stops at a river and he fills up the elixir bottles with water from the river. And Johnny realizes that it's all a scam, and he thinks he hears the fool killer coming. So Johnny runs away. And then there's another person that he meets who is a general or a leader of some military. He's maybe not a general, but he's some kind of leader of a troop, and they're in some kind of battle or something that's going on, and they're in a very difficult position. And if they make one strategic wrong move, it could mean the death of all of his people that are reporting to him. And he gets an order from on high that is a really unwise order, one that would likely lead to a lot of unnecessary harm and death for a lot of the people involved. And instead of kind of challenging the leader or going back and questioning it or all, he just kind of blindly accepts the order and moves forward. And Johnny, again, thinks he hears the fool killer coming, so he runs away. And so you get the idea of the story. This is Johnny going from place to place to place. Well, eventually, he meets a postmaster with a very kind of simple life, and a man who's organized and orderly and structured and disciplined and a clear thinker, and he does good, noble work that's maybe not flashy, but it it helps people. And Johnny ends up settling down. I think he eventually marries the postmaster's daughter, and Johnny takes over and becomes the postmaster. And he becomes this wise man, having gone through all of these journeys. And eventually he is walking through the woods, and he meets the Fool Killer. And the Fool Killer gives him some riddles to solve. And this determines whether or not Johnny gets to continue to live. And Johnny is so wise at this point, having gone through all these things, that he actually knows the answers to all of the riddles. And yet after he answers them, he agrees to go with the Fool Killer nonetheless. Okay, so that's the short story. Well, what does this have to do with problem solving and treasure hunting and treasure seeking and all those kinds of things? Well, I think there are 5 lessons that I'd like to share with you that are definitely worth considering. And so here's one. Human folly is kind of universal. We live in a world where people fall short and make mistakes and make bad decisions and do things that hurt themselves and others, and we all fall into that in our lives, and that's a real thing. And awareness of that is a really good start, and that leads to a kind of humility. And we could even turn this into a whole theological lesson, but I'm talking about this just more from treasure hunting, treasure seeking, and truth seeking, and the reality is appreciating the fact that, yeah, if we pay enough attention, the metaphorical steps of the Fool Killer are not far behind any of us at certain times. And I think that's a worthwhile lesson. And so that means that when we are trying to solve problems in treasure seek, not to get so arrogant and overly confident, especially early on, but approach our work and our searches with some humility. The second one is the varied experiences. That Johnny went on this journey and he experienced different things, and he actually learned from the bad examples. So he didn't just learn from the good examples of people, although that certainly was a change moment, a linchpin moment in his life when he met this postmaster who became a kind of mentor. But he learned from both the good and the bad examples from him, and he sought wisdom. He desired and aspired to pursue some wisdom. And the third one is that he accepted what was beyond his control. So Johnny didn't seek to live forever. And even at the end, he kind of went along with the Fool Killer, even though he had the answer to the riddle. And I think there's something kind of wild about that, because we have to admit that there are some things that are beyond our control when we're seeking to solve problems and seeking truth and treasure. And that's part of doing it well. A fourth one is true courage lies in the ordinary, grounded choices. Eventually, he became a very disciplined, kind of wise person, not seeking something flashy. And a lot of good problem solving is not in the flash, but in the simple, consistent things that we do. And then the fifth one is living intentionally means looking for wisdom. It means that we want to not just move from another video I had on T.S. Eliot, not just deal with information or knowledge, but get to a place of learning and striving to make wise decisions. And that can make all the difference. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.